Hi there everyone, and welcome to the 12th tutorial in the Software Beginners tutorial series. And in this video we're going to finish off the registration system, as well as probably going to finish the login system as well. And the system that we're going to use is YINI. So the first thing I'm going to do is to include it. Now since we included Y commands, we should be able to include YINI as well, because YINI is part of the YSI package as well. So all we have to do is to include YSI, YINI, and that's basically it. So if we compile now, we should get no errors. However, if you did get an error, you can just Google YINI and make sure that you have it downloaded. Alright, so moving on. Now what we want to do is to do something when a player enters a password. And as you can see here, we show a player dialog. So the actual callback that we're going to use is on dialog response. This is going to be called whenever someone responds to a dialog. What we want to do is to do an if statement and check if response. So this is going to tell if someone clicked a button, or actually this is if they clicked on the first button. However, if it's the second button, because we will have one button which will say continue and one will say cancel. So if response will be called if they click on continue, and then we will have an else statement. So if they did click on cancel, basically what we're going to do on if they click on cancel, we're just going to kick them. So we're going to do kick player ID. Going to make sure that everything works so far. And it does, and we might want to send them a client message. I'm not sure if I have any colors defined. I do. Okay, color green. So we use color green here. I'm going to say you have to log in to continue. Okay, so what do we want if they respond? Well, the first thing is that we have when we do dialog style password, then we're going to get an input text. We also have dialog style message box, and this is just going to show a message box with one button, and you cannot input anything. And then we have some others, but basically what we're going to get here is the input text. You could also get list item, and basically what this is a variable that we can check, and we can check which list item that they choose, because we can have dialog style list, and basically what's that going to create is a list with different items that we can select. And then we have the response, of course, and we have a dialog ID, and that I actually forgot that, so we have to check that first, so sorry for that. So above here we have to check if the dialog ID is equal to, and then we have dialog register 1, and then we will surround all of this, and we're going to indent these ones. Right, so if the dialog ID is dialog register 1, so if they click on that one, and if they give a response, we're going to do something else, we're going to kick them. Alright, so what do we want to do? Now, the first thing we want to do is to make sure that the password was valid. Now, we're going to need an if statement here, and what we're going to do is to check if the length of input text is greater than a specific number. So basically what we have to do is to do strlen, and then we're going to give the input text as a parameter. And remember, the input text is actually a string, and that's why they have the array operators here. So we're not going to use those down here, we're just going to write input text. And then we're going to check if they are greater than, and I suggest that we have like 6 characters. This is going to force them to have at least 6 characters. And the next thing that we're going to do is to make a few other checks. Now what I want to check is if this string, the input text, is alphanumeric. Now what do I mean with alphanumeric? Well, it can either be one of the letters in the alphabet, or it could be a number. Now how are we supposed to check this? Well, the first thing is that we have to take a look at the ASCII table. So if you Google ASCII table, or you go to www.asciitable.com, you will see this here, and we'll get the hex, the oct, the HDM, and the des number, and we also get the character. So if you look at the character row, you can see that, for instance, if you want an A, you want to do 65. So what you can do actually is to just check if the number is equal to 65, and then it would be A. Now of course we would have to do a check which position, of course, and I'm going to show you how we can do this. So I'm going to do an example here in the main. So I'm going to create a new string. So I'll do new, and this is going to be called test string. It's going to have 12 positions, and I'm just going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then that's about it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then remember we have a null characters as well in the end. So there we have our test string, and basically we're going to just remove 1 here and put an A, and then what we're going to do is we'll have to actually loop through and check if any character is A, just for an example. So we're going to do for loop. Now what we're going to do is first we're going to create the loop for the position. We're going to create a new variable which is going to be called x, and basically what this is going to do is this is going to start at 0, and that's good because remember strings and arrays are 0 indexed, so the first position is actually 0. So there we have our position variable, and then we actually need to know what the condition will be. And basically what we're going to do is just do as long as x is less than the length of test string, then we're going to continue, and we're going to give x one more. And what we're going to do is basically going to test string x, and we're going to check if this one, we're going to do an if statement. If the text string of x is equal to 65, then we're going to print it out, and it should work better. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to loop through all of these characters here, and we're going to check if they are 65. Then we're going to write that character in a string, and actually we're going to do an else statement here instead, and if they are not, then we're going to print them. However, we're not going to include is a before. So now if we compile and run it, it should work. So now we can see here, if we go back to our array, you can see that the first one is 1, the second one is 2, the second one is 3, and then we have a, so here it says is a, and then we have a, so we can actually tell if a character is a here by the ASCII table. And then we have all the others as well, so it works. Now what we have to do is create a function to check if any numbers are alphanumeric. Okay, so that's scary. How do we do that? Well, do not worry, we're going to make it really simple. We're going to take this slow here. So we're going to go down, and we're going to create this function below the last known callback, and it's going to be the native callbacks. And we're going to call this one, and firstly it's going to, what is it going to return? Well, we're going to check, basically it's going to return 1 or 0 if it's alphanumeric or not. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is to create a function, and this function is going to be called isAlphanumeric. And of course we want a string, and we're going to check if that string is alphanumeric. And what we're going to do is to check if any illegal characters are used, or actually we're going to check if only legal characters are used, and that is the ones that we want. Now let's take a look at this in a logical way. We have the first one, decimal 0, is null. That's nothing we want. We do not want any of these here, and we're also not going to need any of those here. However, as you can see here, starting at 48 is 0, and then we have down to 9, which is 57. So we do want 48 and 57. Actually, yeah, 48. Okay, so what we're going to do is to check if this string, of course, firstly what we have to do is to create a for loop, and basically what we're going to do is to do as we did in the example. We're going to create a variable called x, and this is going to be running as long as x is less than, and then we have the length of the string, and then we're going to increase it as well, or increment it, and then we're going to indent this one, and now we're going to check if the string is either greater than, and then we take 47, because we do a greater than, and if we did 48 it would be if it's 49 and we 1. So basically what we have to do is 47, because if it is greater than 47 it is 48. So if the string, and then we do x, because remember x is going to start at 0 and go through all the slots in the string. We're going to check if it's greater than 47, or actually we're going to check, and we're going to do two and signs, because we're going to check if it's greater than 47 or less than, and then we do one above 9, which is 58. So if it's less than 58 we're going to check as well. So we do string, and then the x position is less than 58. So it's going to be between 47 and between 58. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this is also known as numeric. Okay, so we're going to check if it's either between 47 and 58. Then we're going to do Control Alt and then the angle sign, sorry, and this is going to be done twice. So we have these weird signs here, and this is going to check if actually if it's an OR statement. So this, if either statement on the side of it is true, then it's going to happen. Now since we're going to use this OR statement here, or operators, what we really should do is to make sure that we have some additional parentheses around this statement here, because this is going to return true. So if we have these parentheses, then basically what we're going to do is we're going to get false or true here, and then we have an OR statement. So if either side is true, the next thing we're going to check is, let's see here, we do not want these ones here, we do not want the underline, but what we do want is ABC and all those characters, and we also want the small characters. So basically what we're going to check is if it's greater than 64, right? Or actually, and string x is less than, and it's going to be less than let's see here, 91. So if it's less than 91, alright, and then we're going to surround these ones with parentheses as well, so it's going to return either false or true on one of the sides. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to check the last ones, which are the smaller ones, the small characters, which aren't capital, and it's going to start at 96 and it's going to end at 123. So we're just going to copy this one here. Basically what we're going to check if is it's greater than 96 and less than 133. So now this long code here is going to check if it's alphanumeric. And what do we want if it is alphanumeric? Well, we're going to check actually if all of them are alphanumeric. So what we can do is that we're just going to continue and this is going to check if it's alphanumeric. Then it's just going to continue the loop and go to the next character. However, if it's not, then what we want to do is to return, and we're just going to return 0, of course. And this is going to be if one of the characters are not alphanumeric, then it's going to return 0. Otherwise, we'll just return 1. Okay, so now we're going to check it. So if we save and compile first, make sure that everything works as it should. Get one warning, but that's basically just because we do not use it. We're then going back to main, and now we're going to check is alphanumeric, and we're going to do an if statement, and if it is valid, we're going to print valid. Otherwise we're not, or yeah, we can write not valid as well. Okay, so now we're just going to write a string in here. So the first one is going to be hello world. I'm just going to mix the characters here as well. I'm going to add 12 as well. So I'm going to save and compile. And now if we go to our server and start it, it should say that it's valid, and it does. It says valid here. However, if we were to add a special character like the percentage tag, and then we save and compile, this time we're going to get not valid, because remember, the percentage tag can be found within let's see which number it is. There, 37, and remember 37 is not in our statements. So what this is basically going to do is write not valid in the console. So if we write it starting now, it's going to say that it's not valid. So basically what we have created now is a function that it's going to check if it's alphanumeric. So what we're going to do now is to just continue on uh, with the password checking. So basically what we want to do is that if the input text is greater than 6, then we're going to do it. Otherwise, if it's less, and actually what we want to do is to add an AND statement here, and the str length of the input text should actually also be less than, let's say, 16 characters. And basically what we're going to do now is to do an else statement below here. What we want to do is to show the same dialog. However, this time we want to change the please enter password to error, and the text here, the information text, is going to be your password has to be at least, and then we have 6 characters long, and we're going to do 6 to 16 characters long, and then we have continue and cancel, of course, as we did as we have in the previous one. And basically what we also want to do is to check if it's not alphanumeric, then we're going to do the same thing here, and we're just going to change the error message to your password has to be alphanumeric. Okay, so we save. So now what we have done is to check if they did not get any response. So if they didn't click on continue, we're going to quit them. However, if they did, but the password was greater than 16 or less than 6, then we're going to show an error, and we're also going to show an error if it's not alphanumeric. However, if it's the right length and it's all good to go, it's alphanumeric. What do we want to do now? Now the way this is going to work is that we're going to save the username's name, and then with an YINI extension, and then in that file we're going to save all the information about the player. So what we'll have to get first is the player name. So we just create a new variable, and this variable is called being called pname, and basically the length of it is going to be max player and player name, and then we're going to get the player's name. Basically what this want is the player ID, and then we want the actual variable, which is pname, and then we have the length, which is size of. So now what we did was to store the player's name in pname. The next thing that we want to do is to actually create a YINI file, or variable, sorry. And the way we do that is to do a new. We then use the YINI tag, and this variable, I'm going to call this one player register YINI. And then basically what we do is equal this one to YINI underscore open. And then what we want to do is to use the strlib function that we learned. We could use a function for this as well, but I don't want to get I don't want this video to get any longer now, so I'm just going to do str replace. And basically what we want is to search for something, and I'm just going to be calling this one name, and then we're going to replace it with the pname, and then we have the actual string. So this is going to be name.yini. So what this is going to do is to grab the name of the player, and it's going to write name the name of the player .yini. So then we create a file called, if the player is called for instance Adam Lane, then it's going to be adamlane.yini. Okay, so now we have created it. And how do we use it? Well, firstly, you have to understand that storing the password as it is very dangerous. So what we have to do is to use whirlpool to actually hash the password. So what we're going to do is to create a new variable, and this is going to be register buffer. It's going to be 129 characters, we can see here that the first thing that we should add is VP underscore hash. We'll then add the buffer, which is register buffer, and then we have the length, and basically what we can do is size of register buffer, and that would equal 129. And then of course what we also have to add is the string, which is the input text, and the input text is basically the password. So we store the name and we create a file with the name.yni. We then hash the password that the user entered, and now what we want to do is to actually store that hashed password. To do so, all you have to do is write yni underscore write string, and what this wants is basically first it wants a name, and a yni file works like this. It has a name and then a value, and basically it's going to write the name first and then a column and then the value. Then it's going to get to a new row to write a new value. So the first value we're going to have is password, and we're also going to set a tag. So we do yni set tag, and the tag that we're going to do is going to be on this player register yni, and the tag is just going to be stats. And we also want to specify to the write string what we want to write to, and we want to write to register yni. So we want to write to player register yni password, and now the value is going to be register buffer. What we then want to do is yni close, then we specify the file, which is player register yni. So it's going to open and create a file called the player name.yni. It's going to set a tag, and this is basically something that we can use later on, and I'm going to talk about that in the future, but just include the stats tag. Then we're going to write a string, and the string that we're going to be called is going to be called password, and it's going to be the value of register buffer, which is a hashed version of input text. And then we're going to close it. Now if we save and compile, let's see that we did not get any errors. Got one error. Let's see, error expected token. Alright, let's see, line 309, and we got str replace. Let's see here what's wrong. Oh, of course, underscore, we've got a semicolon on line 307, so we just add that one. We then save and compile. This time it worked without problems. Now what we want to do is to actually change the actual text row. So if we go down here, we can see that we have a text row called register password, and then we have an array with the player ID. Basically what we want to do is to do player text draw set string, and this is going to want the player ID as well as the player text with the player ID, and we're going to set the text to str underscore repeat, and this is a function within the strlib library or include. And what we're going to do is to do stars x amount of times, and the amount of times is actually the length of input text. And once we have added these signs here, what we want to do actually is to hide the text row, and we also want to show it because otherwise it will not update the text. So now all we have to do is to copy this one and then paste it below. So now we are almost done, but before we are finished, we have to actually change the onPlayerConnect one. So if we go back to onPlayerConnect, the first thing is that we can remove that one, at the top, which is just from a previous tutorial. But basically here we have all the ones that are going to be shown if the player is registered. It's not registered, sorry. So what we're going to do is to do an if statement, and we're going to do if f exists, and this is basically going to check if a file exists, and the file that's going to exist is actually the player name.yni. So we're going to get the player name again. We're just going to create a new p name, and it's going to be max player name, and we're going to get player name, and we're going to specify the player ID, the actual variable, and then we have the length, which is size of, and then p name again. Okay, so we get the name, and then we do an str replace, and we're going to search for name, and we're going to replace it with p name. And I know that the code is kind of messy now, but I'm going to fix it soon. And basically the string is going to be name.yni. So if there is a file with the usernames name and then yni, what do we want to do? Well, we certainly do not want to show the registration, because at this time the user actually does exist, as you can see here. So f exists, then we have an str replace here, and then we have an if statement which is completed. So we have f exist, then we have str replace. It's going to replace the name. What do we want to do then? Now we're going to save it. Get one warning. Key player info. Don't mind that one. What we're going to do is to just send a client message, which is going to say to the player ID in color green, you are registered. And then we're going to do an else statement, and then basically what we're going to do is to indent this once, and that's it. So now we're actually done, and now when the user enters again, it's going to say that he is registered, and it's not going to show the registration again. So now if we save and compile, get one warning, but that's because we do not use gplayer info anymore. So that's it. So now we're going in game and see if it works. Okay, so I am back, and now we're going to test it out. So the first mistake that I'm going to try is to actually put a password which isn't long enough. So I'm going to just put ABC, and remember this is 3 characters, so it should be too short. So if I click on continue, you can see here that it says error. Your password has to be at least 6 to 16 characters long. If I enter 17, or sorry, actually 17 characters, I will do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and then I have a lot of characters, so it's definitely more than 16 characters. So if I click on continue, I get the same error. Now if I do a sign, so I do a question mark for instance, I get the same error because it's not 6 characters. However, if I do 6 question marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then I get the same error. Let's see. Alright, it has to be greater than 6, so let's try now. Now I get your password has to be alphanumeric. However, if I do alphanumeric and I have 6 characters, then it's going to work. So if I click on continue now, it actually worked. As you can see, there was some sort of problem, however, with the actual text row here, and I'm not sure why. And also we really have not done anything with the continue button, and we also have not actually spawned the player or anything, so it's kind of weird, but that's something we're going to fix in the next tutorial. But before we go to the next tutorial, we're going to take a look at the script files folder. Alright, so now what we're going to do is go inside our script files folder in our SAMP folder. Now what you can see is that there is actually a file called James_Carter here, And if I go to my SAMP client, you can see here that my name is actually James Carter. So it actually works, and I've created my name.yni. If you right click on it and go to properties, you can see here that it says the type of file is yni. If I right click on this file and click on open, you can see here that the stats tag is here and the password is here as well, and this is the long hashed version of my password. So in the next tutorial we're going to create the login system, and basically what we're going to do is to check if the input text that the user input when hashed is the same as the one found in his file. But before we do so, I also want to make sure that the fexist actually works. So we're going to try to go in game again with the same account when this file exists, and then it should say that you are already logged in. So let's try that, or actually registered. So let's try that as well. And as you can see, it says that you are registered, and then it's going to spawn the player, and you can log in and you are registered. Now of course we're going to do a login system as well, so we're going to have text rows for that and so on. And I know that this tutorial was kind of lengthy, but I had to cover a lot of topics such as the ASCII table, and we had to create a function which checks if the password was alphanumeric, and we also had to learn yini. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and in the next one we're going to create the login system, and then we're also going to fix some of the bugs that occurred. So thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.